Hi everyone, I'm Neil Rawlinson and I'm a geriatrician and my teaching role is with medical students. So in terms of the purpose of our assessment of these students, the Australian Medical Association, which is one of the governing bodies, states that assessment practice aims to produce doctors who are safe, competent, independent and professional practitioners. So in terms of competent, what do we mean by that? They define it in terms of their statement about competency-based assessment, and that includes two components. One is competence in codified knowledge, so that's quite explicit, it's quantifiable, and we've made competencies that are quite easily defined and assessed. But it also includes tacit knowledge, which is knowledge that's not that explicit. It's adopted at the times in clinical practice when things are more complex or not clear, and it develops over time and with experience. So that does present a challenge in how do we assess that component of competency. Another governing body, the Australian Medical Council, have set graduate outcomes that students must demonstrate at the time they graduate. So that's at the end of 4 or 5 years of training. And there's 4 areas they expect them to be competent in. 1 is science and scholarship. 2 is as a practitioner. 3 is as a health advocate for the health of people and society. And the 4th aspect is professionalism and leadership skills. So as you can see, doctors need a range of knowledge and skills to be able to work in the clinical environment. So how do we go about assessing that? So the Australian Medical Council and the Australian Medical Association both have set standards for assessment, but these standards really just reflect criteria that assessments need to meet. So there's no particular guidance on the type of assessment or how these assessments should be conducted. Mary James in 2008 did describe some links between different types of learning and assessment, and she stated that valid assessment is consistent with learning. One of her perspectives of assessment on learning was the socio-cultural perspective on learning, and this seems very applicable to assessment and learning in the medical field. This perspective assesses learning as building knowledge as part of doing things with others. So collaboration and teamwork is involved, and learning is influenced by how thoughts and actions affect each other, and therefore this is more representative of real life clinical practice. In terms of my context, where I teach, I'm involved in a 4-year postgraduate course, and that's 2 years of non-clinical and 2 years of clinical. And currently I'm teaching the 2nd year medical students, and at the end of this year they're really expected to be able to develop differential diagnosis and suggest initial investigations from history and examination. There's less focus on management principles. In terms of how we assess the students, there's multiple different components. Each assessment really assesses different skills and knowledge rather than all aspects at once. So it doesn't really represent how we would practice in day-to-day life, because in a clinical situation we often are exposed to uncertain or unclear medical problems which require us to prioritise and synthesise information, integrate knowledge and apply them at appropriate times. So there is some disconnect with how we assess and what is required in the real life situation. But in order to help me answer that, I have looked to Millard's pyramid as a framework. So this has been used for many years to assess competency in medicine. It shows how knowledge, skills, attitudes, cognition and behaviour are related to a hierarchy of increasing complexity, from knowing to knowing how, to showing how, and to doing. So this is useful because it allows assessment of different skills at different stages of learning and experience, but it doesn't necessarily ensure integration of the assessment of all skills together. The pyramid has been modified and that was done by Al-Reiki and Mare in 2016. And this is because of the increasing need to assess not just cognitive but also non-cognitive components such as professionalism and reflection. So they've added two other components to the pyramid, one being is, which is about personal qualities and professional identity, and the second being do, which is about teamwork. They also go further on to explore how these components, as well as the knows and knows how, etc., overlap and interact with each other and with other learners. So if we use this modified Miller's pyramid, it shows that there's assessment requires multiple different integrated skills to be assessed to ensure we develop competent practitioners. One way we could do this to change our assessment methods is to adopt a more authentic approach to assessment. So this involves students applying knowledge and skills in the real life situation. Authentic assessment helps put students' learning into context, and they can see how real life conditions or situations affect their knowledge and decision making. It does have the benefit that it motivates students to learn and encourages deep learning. It prepares students for professional practice. It integrates knowledge and skills. It challenges knowledge that students already have and enables them to develop reasoning skills. It prepares for lifelong learning, and learning and assessment can coexist as there is an opportunity for self and peer assessment, which can enhance learning as well. By adopting an authentic learning and assessment strategy is one way of integrating all skills required by a competent practitioner. Skills in this setting are not learned in isolation. It has the potential to develop explicit as well as implicit knowledge. Assessment and learning coexist, improving alignment. Assessment is part of the learning process and empowers students. And the more authentic the situation, the more work-ready a graduate is likely to be, and therefore competent. We are using some authentic methods, but I feel this is still quite disjointed for what happens in real life practice, and I would be suggesting that we invest in more substantial authentic practice, i.e. workplace-based assessment from day one of the medical degree, as this would provide much more valuable learning experience for students. So given this information and the need to develop competent medical professionals with a wide range of integrated skills relevant to real life practice, would it be beneficial for students to combine learning and assessment methods rather than using a range of assessment methods that isolate particular skills and knowledge?